Welcome to the Sales Influence Podcast, where we talk about finding the why in how people buy. I'm your host, Victor Antonio. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for lending me your ears. Today, I want to introduce a new phrase into the sales lexicon. I'm calling this the minimum value prospect, the MVP, not most valuable player, not minimum viable product. It is the minimum value prospect. My question is, do you have an MVP? Let me describe what this new phrase is. The minimum value prospect. A couple of years ago, we wanted our kitchen redesigned. And so what we did is we called up this company that does, kitchens and bath remodeling. And in talking to the lady on the line, somewhere during the first 5, maybe 10 minutes of the conversation, she throws this out there. She says, well, just to let you know that our minimum projects have to be at least $5,000. That's what she said. Now, I was a little taken aback by that, I can afford $5,000. Why are you bringing that up? But later on, when I got over myself, I realized that what she was doing is she was qualifying me early on in the sales process. What a great sales strategy. Because if you've listened to past podcasts of mine, you know I talk about client acquisition costs. What does it cost to acquire a new client? And the faster you can qualify people, whether in or out, good or bad, the faster you can do this, the more money you're going to save. So what she was doing was essentially saying, look, if you can't afford $5,000, you can't afford us, so you might as well go somewhere else. That was the translation. But also she was really saying, you know what, it's not worth it for us to do anything below $5,000. As a business, it's not profitable for us, and that makes sense. She was basically stating the minimum value prospect. In other words, the minimum value that a prospect has to offer is $5,000. And if they can't offer that, if they don't meet that threshold, they don't want them as a customer. Another company I worked with, a pool company, I remember we're going through the training session, and one of the questions I asked is, what is your walkaway number? What is your minimum value prospect when you're talking to a potential client? Their number was two things. One was a certain size. The pool had to be so many gallons, or at least the value had to be at least $30,000 for them to even consider working with you. So their MVP was $30,000. In both cases, again, what they knew was if they don't focus on people who can afford them, in the end, they're going to lose money because, call this experience, and maybe you've dealt with this, but have you noticed this? Let's be honest for a second. Let's talk, you and me. Have you ever noticed that when you deal with customers who always want a discount, who always fight you tooth and nail for every single thing on a proposal, turn out to be the worst customers? In other words, buyers who have limited financial resources, in my opinion, make the worst customers because they're always unsatisfied. They're always complaining about something. They want you to do something over again because they're just not satisfied. They're always asking for more, or they're asking for discounts. People who have limited financial resources, in many cases, not all, but in most cases, based on my experience, and maybe I'm a little jaded here, but in my experience, when people can't afford or barely can afford something because it's their last dollar, so to speak, they're more likely to give you more trouble. In other words, complain more, ask more, and put more of a burden on you and actually eat into your profit margins. So the best thing to do is really qualify people early. And maybe using a minimum value prospect number will allow you to do that. So my question to you is, as you're listening to this, what is your MVP number? What is your walkaway number? What is that one number you say, you know what? If you can't afford this, you're just not for me. Because I've had that happen. I've had people call me, says, Victor, I want you to come train my group or speak at my event. I give them my price. And I've had people say, Victor, that's more than I expected to pay. And I'm used to that. And then I give them my rebuttal. But they always insist, Victor, we can't afford that. To which I always say, I understand that you can't afford me. Let me go ahead and recommend somebody else who is in your price range. And then they'll come back and say, but we don't want somebody else, Victor. We want you. And I go, I know, but my price is firm, and there it is. And again, they have to understand that in my mind, I've already made a decision of the type of customers I want to work with. People who understand value will pay value. People who don't get value will always complain about their value. So it's important for you, especially when you're prospecting, especially if you're an entrepreneur starting out, or if you're a salesperson within a company, you have to figure out, what can this company afford? Can they afford to pay me what I'm worth? Can they afford my products or service? If it's a B2B scenario, can they afford the type of systems we're selling? If you're B2C, can they afford the product or service I'm selling? And you have to have that clear in your head. What is your MVP? Because again, the sooner you can qualify somebody as far as not being in your customer base, your demographics, the faster you can move on to somebody who can afford you. So the task for you is, I need you to develop your own MVP, and if you don't have one, you need to start thinking about it. What is your minimum value proposition, or in this case, your minimum value prospect when talking to somebody who's new? In other words, what do they have to be worth? How much can they afford? What can they afford? And what is your number? Don't be afraid. Too often we don't do this. We don't state a number because we're afraid we might lose the business. Well, guess what? Maybe it's sometimes better to lose the business than to gain the business and lose your profit margins because they're too demanding. Keep that in mind. And that is it for this Sales Influence podcast. Don't forget to leave me some feedback on iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube. Let me know what you think. Also, check out my Sales Velocity Academy. It's ever growing. More videos, more courses to help you sell more faster. Check out the salesvelocityacademy.com. Lastly, I want to thank you for listening. This is Victor Antonio, always reminding you, selling ain't hard when you know how. Take care. Hi, I'm Victor Antonio. I'm an author, sales trainer, and keynote speaker. I'm often asked, what makes a great speaker? Is it someone who delivers real content that the audience can use? Is it someone who engages the audience so they're part of the learning experience? Or is it someone who can motivate an audience to push them beyond their comfort zone and discover new abilities? The answer is yes. But the most important thing to remember is that I'm not there to look good. I'm there to make my client look good. Simply put, it's never about me, and it's always about them.